Now initially I didn't plan on making this video so soon, but I wanted to see how far the community could take this hunt for the impossible Easter egg. But because of some recent developments, I now feel obliged to add some crucial information to this hunt. Obviously, if you haven't seen my first two videos about Black Ops 3's impossible Easter egg, you're going to want to at least watch the first one to have any idea what I'm talking about here, just to give this some context. They will both be linked below, along with my Discord and my Twitter if you want to contact me directly after watching this. If you are invested in this, or just a Zombies fan in general, you're going to want to watch this whole video, because if I'm being honest, what we're going to talk about today is an absolute bombshell. Something that's not just to do with the impossible Easter egg, but the history of Call of Duty Zombies in general. But before we get into all of that, we need to quickly recap the two great videos that Glitching Queen uploaded regarding the impossible Easter egg. In the first video, the part that had everyone shook is when she showed the messages she sent to a Treyarch dev about the significance of the KN-44, and how the dev believed it was nothing and always thought it was some kind of gag. She also details how there is potentially an unsolved Easter egg on Horizon Drak involving the titles of books that are scattered across the map, which we will dive into later. To clarify what this developer said, his message doesn't actually rule out the HYPERCUBE blueprint itself, he's just talking about the KN-44 appearances and the significance of the gun itself, which becomes obvious in the follow-up video that Queen made. In this second video, Queen interviews 3 developers that worked on Black Ops 3 Zombies to talk about the impossible Easter egg and the HYPERCUBE blueprint. All of these devs again note that they are aware of Jason Blundell's impossible Easter egg, but have no idea what it is. One of these developers in the interview was actually the one who created the artwork for the HYPERCUBE blueprint.
2015. We've heard of the impossible Easter egg. I know Daniel made the artwork on this one.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So if you look at the D on Dr. Monty,
yes.
and you look at when I signed your cat portrait.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Very
That's
similar.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's like a wall buy. There's a hypercube. I see Robert Simons' design on the summoning key thing,
the sphere,
right
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And then there's all these diagrams and on there. But yeah, I designed the border treatment to make it fancy. For folks who are looking for Easter eggs, it's almost like the parts that the artist contribute into it. Those are like just for artistic sake, and the other parts are like, probably more Easter egg sake.
Did you put all of the diagrams on the side as well, and everything in the center?
Some of the diagrams were handed to me.
Okay.
Told like this, make something cool. These things have to be in there.
Okay.
I was never told what they meant. I was never told, it just had to look like it was part of the blueprint. As far as diagrams go, the one that I contributed to it was the wormhole diagram. And so
he describes how the artist's contributions to this kind of work is limited to aesthetic, and anything Easter egg related is usually passed on down from the top, aka from Jason Blundell. He gives us detail on a few things that he had creative control over, which was the golden border around the blueprint, the wormhole drawing, and lastly he stated he chose an AK-47 image for the weapon depicted inside of the hypercube, which he was asked to change to a gun that was actually in the game, in Black Ops 3 Zombies, which obviously then was the KN-44.
Was it your idea to put the KN-44 in there?
I forget. I think I may have just put an AK-47 in there at first, and then somebody told me, hey, use whatever it is within the game. I know there's all this talk back and forth about, and I can't confirm or deny any of that stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the majority of people's initial reaction to this was, Well, I guess that means the KN-44 doesn't have any significance, but the other parts of the hypercube still are important. But in fact, it's quite the opposite. What people are forgetting is the fact that the blueprint was made months before launch. At the time this blueprint was constructed, the gun inside the hypercube was actually named the Arc 7, which we know even before this moment in time was previously called the ARAC, but was changed for copyright reasons. But we never knew why this name was changed a second time from the Arc 7 to the KN-44, other than the fact that this multiplayer dev said it was changed for something to do with zombies. That was of course until this interview dropped, where these artists explained that most of these diagrams and the hypercube itself were instructed to be added by Jason Blundell. The last thing Blundell had to do to make this hypercube blueprint work for his impossible Easter egg was to change the name of the gun that this artist added, which obviously he did at the launch of Black Ops 3 by changing the name to the KN-44, a name that would serve the blueprint as a hypercube equation. So even though this didn't change anything for me, it still gave us some context to the second name change that occurred for the KN-44. But this still does majorly beg the question, why are all these developers that I have talked to and that Queen has talked to seem like they are in the dark for the meaning of Blundell's Easter eggs? Another example of this is when I messaged the developer who implemented the Chang's Laundry Ticket Easter egg on Shadows of Evil, where you get free 500 points. An Easter egg that was found early on, but it wasn't until later that we discovered that the ticket itself is labelled a cipher in the game's code, which was a complete surprise to us because at first glance this doesn't seem like a cipher at all. This developer that I messaged stated that he remembered scripting the Easter egg itself but wasn't involved with implementing the cipher part, but he didn't doubt that it could be a cipher as the other devs were never in the know with what the ciphers were in Zombies. From all these scenarios, I always had the feeling that all these developers were kept in the dark regarding the meaning of the ciphers, the significance of the KN-44, the hypercube blueprint, and the impossible Easter egg. They were all fed instructions on what to create, whether it was artistic direction or given requirements for scripting a certain in-game Easter egg, and everything was kept on a need-to-know basis, and the only one that ever knew the meaning behind all of these was the big man himself, Jason Blundell. But as I said, that was only a theory of mine. I had no proof of all this, until now. Let me preface this by saying this will come as a shock to a lot of you, but what I'm about to talk about is very real, and I'm sure I won't make any friends talking about this, and my video might get taken down, but for the sake of keeping this hunt alive, I think it's worth it. About 5 years ago, there was an insanely huge Treyarch Zombies leak containing internal documents from Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 3 Zombies development. What's so crazy about this leak? It's been kept relatively quiet this whole time and kept secret in the upper echelons of the Zombies community. So much so that I only had heard rumours about all of this and I hadn't yet had the opportunity to see it for myself. That was until I uploaded my first impossible Easter egg video talking about the KN-44 hypercube theory, and someone reached out to me telling me that they thought I was on the right track. With this message, he also enlightened me on all of this information that he found from old deleted Reddit posts. These leaks show in detail a variety of development plans across Word, Excel and PowerPoint documents for Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 2 Zombies. Fragments of these documents have been made public a long time ago and have floated around Twitter and YouTube quite discreetly. If you have ever seen a post or a video making an outlandish claim about COD Zombies cut content, these documents I'm talking about is where all of this information is coming from. Now in this video I can't show anything, but I will recreate some information that is important. And usually I wouldn't want to talk about leaks, but because this game is so old now and people have been drip feeding this information on social media for years, I think everyone deserves to know the truth. And I really think there is no harm in talking about this because if anything, it excites people to play Black Ops 3 Zombies again. So for today's purpose, we're going to talk about a couple of things to explain why the majority of Treyarch developers are unaware what Black Ops 3 Zombies impossible Easter egg really is. These docs detail a vast landscape of production timelines, art inspiration, map building and weapon design, and Easter egg development. I'm not going to prolong this any further. Let's get straight to the answer that everyone wants to know. Do these docs talk about the impossible Easter egg? The answer is no. Despite detailing every single other in-game Zombies Easter egg, there is not one single sign of any unsolvable or impossible Easter egg whatsoever. Now, I'm sure your initial reaction to this is disappointment, but hang in there because it doesn't quite wrap things up yet. After countless hours of searching and my theories about the KN-44 and the HYPERCUBE, I was straight up in denial. There is just no way that after all the times Jason Blundell specifically mentioned these things, that the impossible Easter egg simply didn't exist. As I said, apparently literally everything is in these docs, step-by-step detail of every Easter egg main quest and side Easter egg in the game. After being shown some of these, I discovered something that cemented my belief that whatever this impossible Easter egg was, Blundell himself kept it hidden from everyone. Through these files, there are only a couple examples where an Easter egg is mentioned and isn't elaborated any further than simply naming it, which is exactly what I'm going to show you. The first one being, surprise surprise, Doris blueprint theme. This HYPERCUBE blueprint is mentioned as an Easter egg asset within the docs with literal no further information. And the only ever other case where an Easter egg is mentioned in the docs and has no further elaboration is for every Black Ops 3 Zombies cipher. There are no solves, no transcripts, and no cipher types even mentioned. Now, if you don't believe me that these solves for these ciphers aren't in here, you should keep in mind that I am far from the first person to see these documents, meaning that if there was any info at all about these ciphers, you best believe that the elites who have already seen these documents would have leaked these solves a long time ago. So you're probably wondering, why am I making such a big point out of the blueprint theme and these ciphers having no explanation in the docs? Well, the reason is when looking through these docs, I didn't really expect to see Jason Blundell's name in here at all, considering he was the creative director of Zombies and not a developer. But I did still keep an eye out for his name, and what I found was the only time he was ever mentioned is on the exact same Easter eggs that have no further in-file development, which confirms that the solves for all these ciphers and the impossible Easter egg are literally kept completely secret from the rest of the development team. Of course, we know that some developers were involved with placing these ciphers and Easter eggs within the maps, but none of them were ever in the know of what they actually meant. Now, unfortunately, this realistically doesn't get us any closer to solving this thing. If anything, it makes it harder, because we know we can't just reach out to a developer and ask them for information or clues. But from my continued digging, I found a few more things that are very interesting. Firstly, I wanted to see if these suspicious books in Horizon Drug are mentioned at all, and they are. All 24 books are listed here, and even an additional book is mentioned called Artifacts of Legend, which is a book that actually can't be found in-game or even in the game's code. So I'm assuming for whatever reason, this specific book was cut. Now, the disappointing part about these books is within the docs they aren't listed as an Easter egg or a cipher, they are just listed as an in-game graphic, which definitely doesn't rule it out as an Easter egg, as these books are definitely still weird, especially because they only appear once each in the map. But going even deeper now, another mind-blowing thing that I found was that there are actually other torn blueprint Easter eggs planned for future Zombies maps that got cut. This one here was planned for DLC 1 Horizon Drug, detailed as Dr. Monty's Factory Blueprint. Just like the HYPERCUBE blueprint in the Giant, this would have been a torn paper Easter egg that was scattered across Horizon Drug. And there was even another one that was cut that was planned for DLC 3 Gorod Crovey, which was listed as an unspecified torn paper Easter egg. All of this makes me wonder, were there other pieces to the puzzle that were meant to come involving these fragmented blueprint schematics that we never got to see? Because we have seen multiple torn paper Easter eggs in the past, but the HYPERCUBE one and this cut Dr. Monty's factory picture are specifically distinguished as blueprint schematics rather than just the normal torn paper Easter egg. We have always assumed that this impossible Easter egg would likely involve us combining a multitude of different pieces across Black Ops 3 Zombies or even Black Ops 4 Zombies, hoping that none of these pieces had been cut content. That's why a large portion of my hunt in the beginning was focused around the one unsolved cipher on the Giant, and hoped that it would be a key to the rest of the HYPERCUBE blueprint. As I explained in my first video, I initially doubted that any of the 10 unsolved ciphers on Revelation had any connection to the Impossible Easter egg, as they appeared long after Blundell ever even mentioned the Impossible Easter egg itself. But through inspecting these docs, I noticed that through each map, all the ciphers are listed to be implemented by Jason Blundell with no further elaboration. This is the case for every map except Revelations. In the development folders, the ciphers in Revelations aren't even mentioned by name at all. This made me think that maybe these Rev ciphers are related to the Impossible Easter egg and potentially contain information that was cut from the torn blueprint drawings that we never got. So I started to go down the rabbit hole of the Revelation ciphers again. Something we always knew going in is that they would be extremely difficult to solve, per this comment during an interview with Dalek.
If they think that's bad, wait till DLC 4. Oh boy. Oh man. Oh, he's doing it again. Oh my god. For those guys out there who are cipher lovers and kind of people into cryptography, then some real treats coming. Okay. Yeah. So it's been 3 years since people have seen that. And if it's 3 years and they've still not figured it out, and how long is this DLC 4 one going to be? I'm thinking that people might not get a single one in DLC 4. Not get a single cipher? It's possible. You're going to make it that hard?
So what could these unsolved Rev ciphers possibly contain that required them to be so heavily encrypted? Well, I have to admit, it wasn't until I started looking into all of this again when I realised that I completely missed this comment from Blundell when Zombie Chronicles dropped.
The ciphers are so hard that there's nothing else. So it's like, is there...
Well, you've not done all the ciphers yet.
Exactly, no one has.
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, when you were going for those ciphers, did you not intend, but I guess expect that people were going to just sort of hit like a stalemate and just be like, well, I've got them, basically?
I don't know. I think there's people out there who... there's such passion in the community. I don't watch it close enough, but I am sure there are people who are still working on some of those ciphers.
Oh, of course there is, yeah.
And I love that, because there's other things that will appear.
Okay.
I literally cannot believe, after going so deep on all of these Blundell interviews, I completely overlooked this comment. Blundell is usually so cryptic to the point it's hard to take anything away from his comments, but here in this instance, he literally says that if we figure out the Rev ciphers, more things will appear. People might say, well, the solves could just be more story bits that will appear, but that doesn't make any sense because we know that the ciphers always tease future Zombies lore. Why would Blundell specifically make a point about more things appearing after these are solved? Because there is no further information about the Rev ciphers at all in the docs, and the potential that these ciphers may be linked to the Impossible Easter egg, this is where all my focus is dialed into now. And even more to that, there is a few more things that you guys need to know about these Revelation ciphers. Going back to this comment that Blundell made to Dalek about how he thought no one would solve any of the ciphers in Revelations. We now know that this wasn't entirely accurate, as 4 out of the 14 ciphers in Revelations have been solved, but 3 out of the 4 solved ciphers on Revelations were relatively easy, and the reason they were easy is because they were intended to be solved and contained messages like this thank you note that was from Treyarch. But 1 out of the 4 solved ciphers on Revelations was not an easy solve, and it's a bit of an anomaly, this one being the straddling checkerboard cipher. Something that was discovered in the Zombies cipher community was the fact that this website, Practical Cryptography, seems to be the website that Jason Blundell himself uses to encrypt many of the Zombies ciphers. One of the pieces of evidence that supports this is the fact that the straddling checkerboard cipher on Revelations is a type of cipher that requires a random key, which is a scramble of the standard alphabet, and also 2 random spare numerical positions in order to decrypt it. On this Practical Cryptography website I'm talking about, the default key and the default spare positions just happen to be the exact same inputs that were used to encrypt the cipher, where if you used a different website, the default inputs would have been completely different, which does indicate that Blundell used this specific website, which means that the other cipher tools on the website also may have been used by Blundell to encrypt the other Revelation ciphers, so it could assist us in solving the rest of these. To confirm this theory even further, this straddling checkerboard cipher was solved by someone named Pretz, who doesn't even play COD Zombies. If you look at the blog post he made from 8 years ago when he solved this cipher, you will realize that he's actually the owner of the Practical Cryptography website, which is pretty insane. I need to give a huge shout out to my friend WaterKH here, who is one of COD Zombies' most iconic cipher solvers. He has spent countless hours analysing all of these ciphers, and he's actually explained to me some of his theories regarding the remaining Rev ciphers and how they could be solved. The first theory is that Rev cipher 9, as listed on the Reddit, is potentially a key for some of the other Rev ciphers. The reason being is that the text is so short and the length of the text is 384 bits, which divides into a 256-bit standard key and a 128-bit initializing vector, which would indicate it being modern encryption, which is far more difficult to solve than classical encryption. Another very interesting theory that he has is that the ciphers that were solved in the first issue of the Zombie comics, which released 1 month after Revelations, might be important. These transcripts are potentially keys to the unsolved book hexadecimal ciphers on Revelation. What indicates this is that each of these transcriptions from the comic ciphers all happen to translate to standard byte-sized keys, the first one being 64 bits, the second one being 96 bits, and the third being 128 bits. Because of this recent spark in the Black Ops 3 Zombies community, people are working hard to use these methods to try solve these Revelation ciphers. This is sort of all the information that I have right now. The timing of all this has been quite weird with Black Ops 6 just around the corner, and I didn't want to take attention away from that game, but I feel like some of this stuff just had to be shared. I can't say for certain that the KN44 blueprint or the Rev ciphers are related to the Impossible Easter egg. That's just what I think. And what I can say for certain is that if we don't solve the rest of this, the only way we will ever know is if Jason Blundell himself comes out and says it. Which I hope isn't how this journey ends. I hope someone will make a breakthrough soon. The content of this video was pretty stunning for me, and I'm sure a lot of you. If you want to hear more about this stuff, leave a like on the video, and I'll be back soon.